Great. Hi, I'm Steve from Lily Wild, and today I'm here with a very old friend of mine.
I'm Judy Ling Wong. I'm a poet, painter, and environmentalist. I'm very happy to speak with Steve. I'm probably best known as the honorary president of Black Environment Network.
Absolutely, Judy. And I think that gives me a good lead in, really, because I think it helps just know a little bit about the people we're talking to. So I know you've done a huge amount. Could you maybe give us a brief synopsis of some of the things you've done working with people in the environment over the years, maybe with a focus on some of the wildlife and that side of things?
Well, I grew up in a Hong Kong that was very ancient. Not the Hong Kong you know now, all glitzy and everything. But in my childhood, Hong Kong was like part of ancient China. And our relationship to nature was very, very different. And we were, when I look back, it sounds so specifically different. But of course, I lived it, which is very different. So for me, nature being at one with me and all those things we talk about were naturally lived as a very small child. So that the way I related to plants and to living things and so on was very, very powerful. And the other thing that happened, of course, was I was trained as a painter when I was very small.
Right.
And in China, all the painting was a kind of vocabulary of nature, so that every aspect of nature represented the human personality. So when I came to the West, I actually got a big shock about the separation between people and nature, how that actually could be. And when I came to London, I came as a painter.
Interesting,
And I very soon got tired of the individualist idea of being a painter in the UK. So I headed towards being community artist. And this is when I met the community. And lo and behold, this is very, very extraordinary. My little group went around working with schools and so on. We were called Arts for Everyone. And we always asked our school or the community what they wanted a project on. Guess what? Nature.
Interesting.
Lots of people wanted nature projects.
Interesting.
And of course, because London is so multicultural and so on, I met the ethnic minorities, and their experience echoed mine, a series of displacements throughout the world. So I had strong feelings about them. So the strong feeling about nature and the strong feeling about people came together. And with the 1987 storm, that was when I began connected with Ben.
And Ben is the Black
Environment Network. A group of people were just starting. They were just friends. This is how voluntary groups actually start. A group of friends coming together and saying, hey, why isn't ethnic minorities visible? Everybody is white. They asked these questions. They didn't abandon the idea. It was asked over and over again at dinners and whatever. And then somebody said, well, I think we should do something about it. That's how the idea was born. And Amanda Bennett, who was one of that group in those days, worked at NCVO. And she talked to...
Sorry, Judy, that's a group for the voluntary sector support in the UK. So
yes, the National Council for Voluntary Organisations.
Absolutely,
NCVO.
Thank you, Judy.
And very rarely, as a coincidence, the head of NCVO was then an ethnic minority. Usha Patel, who's now in the House of Lords. And Amanda talked to her about this idea, and she says, very interesting. Amanda was in the city's unit inside NCVO. She says, oh well, very good. Ethnic minorities are in the city. You are here. Do something about it. Let's give them a desk. And that is how we began. We began at the top.
Absolutely.
We began with a desk inside NCVO, and we were told, use everything you want, see how far you could get.
Incredible. And from there it all grew. And since then, I know that you've been involved in public speaking, you've been involved in a lot of activities and activism, and you've been involved in helping run projects, actually getting people out from inner city areas into the countryside and so on. And I was very lucky for a period of time to work with Judy, so I've had some insights into some of that work. But I wonder, it's really interesting because you've kind of answered it already, your motivation for getting involved in this. I mean, you obviously had this strong link with nature right back to your childhood. Do you think that was the driving motivation, or was it a motivation to do with people that got you involved?
In a way, growing up in that kind of atmosphere, the other thing that happened was because everything was at one, yeah? There was no sort of contradiction about, oh, you are now in the arts sector, oh, now you're in the nature sector, oh, now you're in business. Everything is somehow intertwined. And I carried this attitude.
Right.
For example, I came to London first of all as an artist. As a young artist, I was doing not badly. And then I did the community art and so on, and this idea of environment came along. I was in my very early 30s, and I suddenly found social commitment.
Right.
And the social commitment competed, according to the West,
Yes.
with being an artist. And
Yes.
I actually, for many years, I dropped everything to do with art
Right.
and poured all my creativity into the environmental sector. And people couldn't understand. They said, Judy, how could you do this? How can you just sort of drop the arts and go into it? And I said, I never saw it as dropping anything.
Yeah.
Creativity for me was not about creating products to sell. So I was equally creative in the environmental sector. So that's why Ben was so creative.
Right.
You see, everything sort of intertwined and was one and the same. And I think that is what has been part of the strength that I brought to Ben. The strength that everything is related and interconnected from the very beginning. That was the message we carried to the environmental sector.
That's really interesting. You probably can't hear, but we've got a helicopter
Yes.
going around over our heads, which is really quite difficult to distract us with. But I think they finally decided to pull back a bit. I hope there's not a rescue going on in the Thames. Anyway, that's really interesting, and I think that this connection and the way you've come at it from different disciplines and that kind of, so in a way it's a different sort of motivation because it's that whole,
It's a
that
framework,
holistic.
it's a way of seeing. I always say, you know, the coming together of thinking, seeing and feeling is really, really central to everything we do.
Right.
So, and that comes from where I was.
Right, yes, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
And that also has driven my continuing development because when people come to me from the education sector or from dream jobs, I don't say, oh, hang on a minute, nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with everything.
Yes.
And I
yes.
think that attitude has been an enormous driving force for who I am and what I do.
Brilliant. So if you, because we were talking earlier about all the positive things that happen.
Yes.
You know, I think often a lot of us are hearing, oh, this is terrible for the environment, that terrible things happen with wildlife and so on. But there's also been lots of really good things that we've all been working with. For you, what do you think are some of the big positive contributions to the natural world that maybe your work or the things that you've seen over the years? Can you maybe give us a couple of
Well,
examples?
we are known through my work with Ben for pioneering now what is called a field of work, the field of multicultural environmental participation.
Right.
It's recognized as a field of work, and we developed all the methodology, which is all through doing positive things. Nothing miserable at all.
Absolutely.
You know, and,
Yeah.
and I think one thing I used to always say about the environmental sector, and one of its greatest attributes, is that everything you do in it is positive, which is not true in other sectors. There's lots of fighting, desperately negative things, but in the environment, you can bring these things together so that your setting is all about the beauty and magnificence of nature in which we live and which we need to be reunified in this world. But that is the thing that is really positive as a message and also as a vision. You know, what is your vision in terms of environment? It is what it is. That is the vision. The restoration to what it actually means in our life and how deeply it can mean. so that you are actually driven to do something about it, not just out of fear, say, oh, if you don't do this, it's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
No, if you do this, it's going to be magnificent.
Yes, that's a lovely way of looking at it. I really like that, Judy. And I wonder if is there sort of a particular message that if you know meeting young people or people getting involved in the kind of nature and environment movement now, anything that you would kind of a one piece of advice or a word of wisdom or that you would say to them, think this or consider
When
that?
you get it right, and getting it right is just about being integrated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that everything matters and that everything is about you. It's not something out there, it's about you. When you have that, people come in. If it's about them, they come in, they will do things. You don't have to make them. And it is exciting. It's exciting to do things together. It's exciting to see a local area that has nothing to be transformed by environmental projects, the greenery coming in, the joy of it. And then children being able to grow up with it instead of the first generation which lived in this bleak council estate, so nothing but concrete and so on. So it's been an exciting time to see transformation and to see generations coming up. When we started, there was nothing, you know, the environmental sector didn't even think about ethnic minorities. But I always want to say, the other thing about it is that it didn't just not think about ethnic minorities, it didn't think about people at all. It didn't even think about white people, never mind ethnic minorities. And we brought that in, and ironically, it is us talking about ethnic minorities that actually put people on the map within the whole of the environmental sector. When they finally clicked, and I kept saying to them, look, I'm talking about ethnic minorities, but really all the disadvantaged groups, you can do exactly the same thing. The methodology is exactly the same. And they started doing it. They started reaching out to white council estate trapped white people and youngsters and disability, and they used all the methodology that Ben developed, and it was exactly the same. So we brought into the environmental sector the people dimension and the enjoyment dimension. After 30 years of participation, I say that the whole process from engagement to contribution can be collapsed into two phrases. We love what we enjoy and we protect what we love.
Lovely. That's really nice.
And the first part, we love what we enjoy, is all about access. Where people live, work and play. If you get that right, they will come with you. You don't have to badger them to volunteer on anything. They want to protect what they love.
And there was something, I'm just going to bring it up because I think it fits very neatly with that, which is, I remember some years ago we were having a conversation about some of this, and there was this thing that we too often hear, we need to get people interested in nature. We need to encourage people to enjoy wildlife and the natural world. And we were having this conversation that we could hardly think of anybody that didn't enjoy nature and the natural world. So why are we all going around telling them they should all enjoy nature and the natural world? That wasn't the block, that wasn't the issue.
The block is they didn't have nature.
And they didn't have access.
In such a built-up environment like London and so on, we're very, very lucky to have huge parklands and so on. But some people even never get to them. You know, for example, the underground fare to get from the centre of town to Kew Gardens, which is in the west of London, but the people in east of London can never afford to go there. Take a whole family? You got to be joking. So you got magnificent things that people never see, which means that for deprived communities, it's got to start where people are living, working and playing. Unless you do that, and they don't even know these other things exist, and if it existed, they can't go to them, which is terrible.
Well, that's really interesting, Judy. I really appreciate you stopping and having a chat. It's a great excuse for me because I'm able to catch up with old friends and have a chat with them. But Judy really is an inspiration. And for those of you who aren't aware of her work and aren't aware of Black Environment Network, if you're not aware of the Black Environment Network, then I strongly recommend you look up more and find out more about the work that Judy's been involved in. But thank you very much, Judy. Great to see you again.
Great.
And onward to the next talk together. Thanks very much.
Great.